It's my first trip to the Philippines, and I didn't know what to expect. And I spent 2 days wandering around, and I really enjoyed it. We have a great city here. I can't claim to know the whole country, but I wandered a bit around Manila. I sat in taxis quite a long time. I've had a wonderful time, so thank you. I'm going to talk. Yes, here we are. I'm going to try to give you an overview of how I see the creative economy. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is and when the idea started to get traction. And I'm going to try and chart the idea over the last 15, 20 years, because it's changed quite a lot in how we understand it. And then I've been asked to come up with some ideas that you might consider worth thinking about for the Philippines. Creativity itself is really difficult. So when I talk about it, I try and keep it in the words I use really simple. And I define it as simply as using ideas to have more ideas. It's that simple. We shouldn't be too complicated about it. It's done always by individuals, by people. And it occurred to me some years ago that the creative economy is the first economy to be based on people. Not based on land, not based on money, capital. You need capital, but it's not based on capital. It's not based on equipment. It's based on people. On individuals expressing themselves in ways that they find interesting and worthwhile and give them pleasure. At the heart of creativity is the thought that our ideas are worth having, that we are making some contribution to the world. That sounds probably grand, and it could be a very small contribution, but the benefit is there, and that's what drives a lot of people on to do something that is new and different, but also worthwhile, more beautiful, more elegant, could be faster, cheaper, more convenient. In some way we are making the world a better place. And of course it's very subjective, because what I think is beautiful, you may not. What I find interesting, you might find totally dull and uninteresting, not worth it. This subjectivity is part of the power of creativity, and also one of the problems. Particularly when you start to set up policies for creativity and the creative economy. We're dealing with a lot of stuff that is subjective, intangible, and in some way the thinking process is invisible. The results are visible. We saw wonderful, magnificent results here, but the thinking process, the composition, the choreography, the thinking, how that is developed in someone's mind is invisible. And that's quite tough. So that's creativity. The creative economy, creativity is what we all do, and I'll come back to this later on, but it's widespread, it's probably human industry. Creative economy is a relatively small part of that, and it's where we decide to turn our ideas into a product, a good or a service, put a price tag on it, put it out there in the market, and sell it. And in the last 15, 20 years or so, I guess we used to measure this, we used to count this, we've now stopped counting, because almost every major economy in the world has made a big commitment to the creative economy. High level, at the level of the head of state or the head of the government, made a really high level commitment to the creative economy. And the number of cities and districts and neighborhoods and counties and provinces and regions that have declared their support for the creative economy is in their thousands. I'm not talking about UNESCO's title, which is a very special, specific title, has to be earned and fought for. But for a district to say we are ourselves on our own account making a commitment, that is now something that is, as we say, in the air. It's what people do. I come from the UK, which made a major initiative about this 19 years ago. And this is the size of the creative economy in the UK. It's about 90 billion. Sorry, creative industry. This is a list of specific industries that are described as being creative. The government compiled a list. And many countries followed it. Made their little changes, but followed the principle of saying there's a list of specific industries that are creative. I'm going to talk a bit about this later on, because we are beginning now to have questions about this principle. But the list of creative industries is now turning over about 90 billion. In the UK, we use something called value added. It's pretty close to GDP. It's statistically slightly more accurate. Gives a slightly more accurate picture. Makes international comparisons quite difficult. But that's the size of our output of the creative industry. We also use the phrase creative economy to describe creative businesses, creative money making, which is not in those specific industries, but is in the rest of the economy. And that's about 1.5 times the size. I'm going to come back to these figures later on. This is the government chart showing the main sectors, the main creative industries. Pressing this, but nothing is happening. We seem to be stuck. Can we shift the slide? Oh, you can see it, I can't. America, much bigger, of course, about 700 billion. Now, that's the sort of static picture as we are today. When did this start? Well, creativity, of course, started when probably we became aware of ourselves, aware of our bodies, aware of ourselves, and we started to decorate where we lived. We started to decorate our skin, our hair, our teeth. We made jewelry, ornamentation. Let's say 30,000 years ago. Creativity is, and I will say this again and again, part of the human condition. The potential is there in every human. the money-making side probably started about 400 or 500 years ago in Europe. Some of the artists in the Renaissance became very rich people. Shakespeare died a millionaire. And I like this quote by a man called Daniel Defoe, who was an author and a businessman, a very active businessman. He kept on setting up companies, most of them were not very successful. But he said, writing has become a very considerable, very substantial branch of the English economy. He said that, interestingly, about 15 years after England launched the world's first copyright act. So copyright was a major factor in anything else to say. And then the search for a name for this really started after the Second World War. Fritz Batchelor was a man that I came across a long time ago. He was the first man to count up the load of knowledge in the US economy. And he showed he was over 50%. He coined this phrase, the knowledge. Information economy, knowledge economy, post-industrial society. Daniel Bell, not quite sure what was happening, but knowing something was happening, couldn't put a name to it. And then Donald Tapscott and others digital economy. We've had entertainment economy, attention economy, and so on. But the creative economy really started in the 1890s. So what happened then? I think what happened then was creativity started to become a mass movement. Whereas before that, artists and designers and inventors were operating in small groups on the margin of the economy and the margin of society. They began to be recognized as part of the mainstream. They began to become central stage. Creative people, particularly in film and television, which is my own business, and in music and publishing, began to get much more commercial. Every business started to rely much more on creative inputs to add value to what they were doing, to design, brand, logo, advertising, adding style, using design in all sorts of ways to add value to what they were doing. And the consumer was much more willing to pay money for novelty, for design, and for style. And in 1997, the British government made the creative economy a key plank of their industrial strategy. The Prime Minister declared creativity to be a source of wealth. They collected data on it, and they made it a national strategy. And of course, at the same time, from the mid-90s onwards, I suppose, really, digital and then online digital started to change almost every industry, every sector. In the way that people generated content, the formats they used, the pricing, the relationship between the owner of the content and the audience, the consumer, the user, and distribution. So where are we now? After 50 years of thinking about how we use knowledge and information in a hyper-network society with tremendous premium value put on novelty and style and brand in a very interconnected world. what is the role of creativity and development? And I was then paraphrasing a brief I was given about 10 years ago now by the Chinese government. I do a lot of work in China. I have an office in Shanghai. And they wanted to reform the curriculum for teenagers and make sure they were fit for the future economy of the world. They wanted to make sure the curriculum educated and trained teenagers. So they came to a group of 7 universities. My company was one of those. And they asked us to paint a picture of the world. And I was asked to paint a picture of the creative economy. And I sat down in my office in Shanghai, and I thought, this is easy, I can do this. And I started to write and realized that some of my ideas had changed. I wrote a rather unexpected piece. We went to Beijing to present it to the Minister of Education and State Council. And a friend of mine, a party official, came to me and said, "John, I don't understand this creative economy. I don't get it. It's all very vague. Just sum it up in a few words." And I summed it up in a few words, spontaneously. And I'm now going to expand on what I said, because those 3 words, those 3 principles, now sum up. To me, what I think the creative economy is, my ideas have not changed in the past 10 years. If anything, they've become very much concerned in practice. My ideas went down well in Beijing. The next week I went to Hong Kong and made a presentation to my old company, HBO Sports Merchandising. And they thought, that's very interesting, we're going to take these ideas back to Los Angeles. So if I got approval from the party in Beijing and HBO Merchandising, I thought, I want to do creative ecology is 3 principles. The first principle is the principle of what I call universality, and it's the principle that I referred to slightly at the beginning, which is that everybody is born creative. Every child is born with an aptitude, the mental faculty, to look around the world, to compare what they see with what they know, their memory, and in a sometimes semi-conscious, sometimes conscious way, to come up with ways that they think would make them more comfortable or happy. And we know this by looking at babies. This starts at birth. Children love to play. They love stories, they love narrative. Even they know it's a story, they want it again and again. They love dressing up. They love painting and drawing on anything, themselves, the walls, tables. They will invent imaginary friends that are as important as the real things, sometimes more. They'll invest objects, their toys, with enormous symbolic expressive value. And there's some evidence, and it's not a particularly cheerful fact, but there's some evidence that peak creativity is about the age of 3 or 4. And the reason for that is, if you think about it, is that at the age of 3 or 4 or 5, you go to school. And of course, at school you learn how to behave, and you sit in rows, and you have to basically be like everybody else. And you're given rules that you have to follow, all for very good reasons. So your creativity is constrained. For some people, it's then gone forever. The tagline now is that being creative is normal. Not something that is a special gift given to a few people. Now, I'm not saying every child obviously is going to become a best-selling author or a brilliant designer. That requires a lot of hard work and a lot of training and a passionate desire. But the raw material of creativity is genetically hardwired in each of us. Now, all this is happening inside the mind, very internal. It's private. Creativity is a private activity. But we do want to bring it out. We want to bring it out and share it. We want to bring it out and talk about it. We want to share other people's creativity. So the second principle is that creativity needs freedom. Freedom, it's like freedom of expression, it's like freedom of press, but it's a more active relationship. It's being free to manage our relationship to our ideas. And to say yes, to say no, to say, well, I like bits of it, and I'll change that bit, and I'll call it something. The ability to define what you've done, to define your idea, give it a name, give it a meaning, is a critical, if you like, a skill in the creative economy. The people who are articulate and able to define what they're doing and to say what it is are in a position of great power. And then the third principle is you need a particular kind of freedom. You need freedom expressed in markets. You need the freedom to take your product to market, with a price tag on it, to tell people about it. You need markets that are open, therefore accessible, transparent, and fair. The core sectors, which are related to the nominated sectors, art, design, entertainment, media, and innovation. The food, Southeast Asia is really important. The Americans have a working group on creativity at the Coast Guard level. And in China, a very senior government official, Liu Wei, good friend of mine and a specialist on creative economy, and he launched a committee. He was deputy chair of the People's Informative Council, and he launched a special project on creativity and agriculture. So that's where we are. And very soon I'm going to come up with some ideas about how we might become good at it. But before I do this, I want to say two things about what it's like to work in the creative economy, because there's the thought that I often come across that compared to farming, agriculture, mining, manufacturing, logistics, assembly, that art and culture, creative industries are a bit flaky, not a real job. You're having fun, aren't you? So, you know, it's not real business. It's not real. It's still a little bit marginal. It's a little bit optional. Still optional. Quite nice, isn't it? So it's not real business. I think in many ways, actually, the opposite is true. I think being a successful creative entrepreneur is at least as tough as running a manufacturing plant, and is more competitive. And one of the reasons it's more competitive and you're facing more risk is what I call the personal risk. Being creative is a lonely job, and there's always the fear of failure. I write up there that creative economy is an economy of failure, and normally when I mention that, the room goes very quiet. But the reality is we fail more often than we succeed. That's the reality. With farming, you generally succeed. Manufacturing, if you're sensible and cautious and you discuss it and you prototype it, you'll probably succeed. Creativity, you're always searching for novelty. Your judgments are subjective. And if my ideas are felt to be bad, it's me, John, would say that it's my idea. And I get this praise if people like the idea, and I get the praise if it's dead. It's tough, very tough. It's individually much tougher. And then there's the business risk of dealing with assets that are intangible, as I said, invisible. It's very hard to predict the success of something on whose value the judgments are subjective. It's really hard. So I think it's at least as tough, if not tougher. And I have, to sort of symbolize this, I have what I call the two judges that watch every move I make. The first is the judge who says, John, is this the best you can do? Surely you can do better than this. All the time. If you're trying to be creative, you're trying to come up with a new idea that is not only attractive to yourself, but you hope will be, pleasing or beautiful. There's no yes, no answer. You've just got to try and do it, and it's never ending. And the judge is saying, this is the best you can do. Surely, if you try a bit harder, you can do it better. And the second judge is saying, well, it may be the best you can do, not very good, but we'll live with it for the time being, that's the market. And that's tough, especially then. I was a director of a film company for a long time. We had a lot of, we were Britain's biggest film company. We had a lot of scripts come in, and we had to look at the script and make a judgment about whether we should invest any money and turn that into what we would call a project, which has the elements attached, the writer, the director, the cast, the money, and we would go out and raise 50, 60 million sterling. Basically on the script and the director. And we did that on the basis of what we thought the market was. That's a tough business. And I think we should always keep in mind, when I say the creative economy is the only economy, the first economy is based on people, these are the people. Well, it's not an easy job. So how? I was asked to come up with some proposals about how the Philippines should develop its creative economy, and I feel I have to say, as I'm sure you are fully aware, really unqualified to do this. Because I know a bit about creativity, and I know how it works in many countries, but I do not know your country. So please forgive me. I'm an outsider here, and I prefer to do this sort of thing in conversation and workshops rather than in this sort of practice. But I'm going to take a risk. Please be generous with your comments, or just keep it to yourself. I'm going to group them in the three categories of universality, freedom, and life. The countries that have succeeded in energizing and growing their creative economy are ones where the leadership of governments has given a very strong statement in its favor, either the head of government or the head of state, and not just once, but many times. The UK commitment to the creative economy was made in a series of speeches and actions. When Tony Blair won the election, became Prime Minister in 1997, and he appointed Chris Smith, who was a PhD and a very respected cultural expert, as the Minister of Culture. And Tony Blair and Chris Smith, in 1998 onwards, worked tirelessly to say the creative economy is really important to the future of the country. Personal well-being, to prosperity, the future of Britain lay in the creative economy. And at the time, we thought that would be of great interest to artists and designers and people in the creative economy, and it was. They liked that. They thought that's great. About time to do. What took you so long? But actually, with hindsight now, there were at least two other benefits that were just as important. A friend of mine called John Neverton, who was the special advisor to Chris Smith, told me that in his view, the initiative made by Tony Blair and Chris Smith had the greatest impact on government, on other sectors of government. Every other government department, from the Treasury, Education, Foreign Affairs, thought, we've got to change direction. We've got to include the creative economy in everything we do. All the government agencies. And in John's view, that was the major impact. I think there's another impact that I've come across, which was on the parents and young children. Because in the 1980s and the 1990s, early 90s, if someone had said, a young person at university or school, said, I want to be a designer. I want to go work in fashion. I want to be a filmmaker. The parents would have said, shut up. You only get a proper job. But with the government saying the creative economy was the future, the parents felt, wow, that's rather exciting. Good luck. How can we help? And there's a shift, which is really important, and encourage people to go work in the creative industry that would not have done so 10 years ago. So the action there is not only the declaration of the creative economy, the creativity and innovation are included together, are important for the country, but a sustained effort at a high level, again and again and again, getting the concept of it to everybody in the country. Education is a topic that is hard to avoid. There's a very strong correlation between the levels of education and the size and success of the creative economy. Generally speaking, people in the creative economy have a higher level of education, and they earn more as well. And so you can map it in countries around the world where there's a higher level of education to get a bigger and stronger creative economy. And what's interesting about this is that it's not only on the supply side. Yes, the people who have gone to full length of schooling and college and university will be more inclined to use their brains in their work. They've been using their brains at school, they've been using their brains at university. They want to go on using their brains. They want to go on questioning. They want to go on using their own imagination. So they want to go work in the creative industry. But also on the demand side, which is equally important, they want to buy the stuff. There's no point in making the stuff, you've got to buy it. And you find that people who have had more education and have gone to university or college, they're more inclined to buy the products. First of all, decorate their home, or just decorate their life. So really important, the products as well. There's a rather nice quote I had there from McKinsey, the American management consultancy, which does an annual survey of the number of jobs that require what they call passive knowledge, which is the worker's ability, the freedom to look at something and if they think it could be better, to make it better without reporting upstairs to their boss. And of new jobs, it's now 70% in Europe and America. In other words, if you don't have this ability, it's going to be tough. It's going to be hard to. And the action there is to, as much as you can, to get people in school, to keep them in school, to keep them in school for as long as you can, and also to extend the specialist colleges in design, film, fashion. Those are really important. When I was preparing for my visit, I came across your kindergarten education law, which I think was in 2012. And I came across this phrase, young learners to be encouraged to create and discover, to become willing risk takers. And I think we're talking here people who are age 4 and 5. And I thought that's a really interesting principle. But why should 5-year-olds have all the fun? I thought this is a great principle for all education. You've got it for your 5-year-olds. I think it's right. But I think it should be a guiding principle for people before kindergarten, post-kindergarten, and indeed all education. Young learners, I like the word, should be encouraged to create and discover. and they have to take a risk in doing it. I've talked about education, I now want to talk about learning. And I'm going to characterize them by saying that education is what the government does, what the government provides for a set number of years, compulsory, and then when you leave school or you leave university, you sort of never go back. You've done it. You've done it. You pass exams, have a party, you've done it. Learning is something that starts when you're born, if you're lucky, most of the time. It should continue through education. It's voluntary, and it can be continued. And I have noticed a very clear correlation between artists and creative people and their curiosity. And if people stop being curious, stop learning, they stop being creative. A creative artist cannot stop learning. A creative artist who stops learning dies. Learning is an essential, critical part of the process. And it seems to me that in the creative economy, and indeed in a creative society, that learning is sort of more important than learning that I decide to do, and because I want to. And I'm in control. That's more important. And of course, a good school should help me to learn. And actually, a good school should teach me to learn. Not just give me facts that I then repeat, but teach me to learn. There was a great man called Sergio Mota, who was Indonesian, and he was a journalist and politician and educationist, and he was a great man. And when Indonesia became independent, his ambition was to put the priority of the development on education, and he wanted to get all the international agencies, the World Bank and so on and so forth, the regional banks, to not to fund infrastructure, but to help the people to help themselves through education. And he said, if we get an educated, learning population, then we can pay for our own bridges and our roads, and we can invest and manage them. Now I know at the moment the Philippines is about to embark on a massive infrastructure series of projects, and that's great. I'm not going to say that's not a good idea. But don't forget what one could call human infrastructure, without which the rest will not work, and you won't be able to afford it. And Sergio Mota came up with this phrase, learning capacity, which he applied to the nation, the newly independent nation of Indonesia, and which I apply to every kind of social organization. The city, what is Manila's learning capacity? The district, the company, and ultimately, of course, because this is what I'm saying, to me, what is my learning capacity? Am I exercising it? Could I possibly increase it? And I think it would be a worthwhile thing to consider having a look at the Philippines learning capacity. I've been teaching in a management school, the Drucker Management School in Los Angeles, and we are sort of revisiting, revising, changing the curriculum. But the managing talent is managing talented people is different from managing a normal enterprise or a normal production. I've written down some of the things there. On the finance, I've written down putting your creative assets, your intangible assets on the balance sheet. I know the Philippines have made some progress on this, but it's mainly in the field of software. And whenever you make something, whether it's a design or a film or a fashion, you need to capitalize in a way that makes sense and investors can understand and rely upon. And I'm just saying there that it would be interesting to talk to your management colleges and your business colleges to see what they are doing about the Christian economy. Copyright. Fundamental is the way we own and control our assets. And I'm including patents and trademarks, design rights as well. And I have two actions there, two proposals. One is to set up in Manila a advisory service to advise on intellectual property for free. Now that might seem rather generous, but I've got a model, I won't go into it here. Anybody wants to talk about it afterwards, very happy to talk about it. We did it in London, works very well. Sydney's done it. Denver's done it in America. It's a very good model. It's completely robust. You can organize it so you can get lawyers to give you free advice. It does work, I'm sure. And it's a wonderful, wonderful service. A lot of creative people cannot afford commercial law. The other thing I put up there is a digital copyright exchange hub, which we are developing in the UK, and I've just been working with some universities in China and some copyright centers in China to do a Chinese version, which is being supported by the online services in China. I'm going to finish with retail. And I'm doing it partly because retailing and pricing is very seldom talked about when we talk about the creative industry. It's all about production. It's all about work being made. How can we get more work made? It's all about supply. But I'm talking not only about industries, I'm talking about the economy. And economies consist of buying and selling, all the countries. And Drucker, the great Peter Drucker said there, and I think he's so right, a company only really has two functions. Innovation, what are you doing that's different and the customer might be interested in, and then selling it. And we should never forget that. When we're setting up a creative business, creative organization, the creativity, the innovation is why we're doing it, but selling it is equally important. And finally, Finally, here are 4 principles that I have for the creative ecology. Change and diversity, learning and adaptation. And if whatever you do increases that, it's probably a good thing. And if what you're doing prevents that or constrains that, we need change, we need diversity. We need to learn how to do things better. And then, having learned, we need to adapt our ideas or adapt our behavior. It's a continual process, learning and adaptation, learning and adaptation. In the creative economy, it's endless. And I'm going to end with a quote by Walt Disney, who is probably the most successful creative entrepreneur the world has ever seen. He was a very clever illustrator, inventor, businessman. Not a particularly nice man, I have to say. But, he invented a company that is still today probably the world's best known brand. And he said the future is not already out there waiting for us to discover it. It's not in a report, it's not something we can get ready made. The future is to be created by us. First in the mind, very privately, and then in the action. First in the mind, and then in the action. And I think that statement by a man like Disney is a great motto, if you like, for the creative economy. Thank you very much.